All right, and hello everybody, and welcome to the second. Wait a second here. Waiting on this to. Come on. Okay, it's streaming through OBS. Let me look here. I'll just do low latency to see if that helps. Stream setup help. Okay. Starts. All right. I am live. All right. Well, then, hello, everybody. Sorry about that. I had to make sure that my stream was actually live and wasn't lying to me. It's still very much a DIY thing, and I'm very much new to all of this, so thank you for bearing with me on that. So where I left you at was on Sunday. I was very close to finishing the Octopus, and I just wanted to show this off here. So this is how it's looking, and give me just a second. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is the Octopus, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Once I was done, here, let me try to lower the brightness on that. It reflects a lot of light, but yeah, there were only a few details I actually had to go in and fix, and it just didn't seem like something that was really worth streaming over. So all I ended up doing was finishing up the cane, the monocle. I did a little bit more in the highlight on the hat and the cup, and otherwise, yeah, it's completely done. So the original is for sale, and I will be selling prints. So if you're interested in that, yeah, definitely let me know. Thank you. So, trying to figure out some other things that I could do for today's stream. I decided to. Hang on, let me find it. This is a coloring page from my coloring book, Creepy Cute, which is also for sale if you would like it. And yeah, I got a Bride of Frankenstein. There's the demon cat, a witch, bats, Medusa, alien cat, blood spattered nurse, Chibi Baphomet, zombie bread, a demon, baby Cthulhu, and a vampire. So this is a small one. It was kind of a first attempt, so I'm going to be doing more coloring books in the future, and you know, hopefully it'll kind of catch on. So yeah, here is my demon cat, and I'm going to have to do acrylic inks again. Just because I inked it over non-photo blue, which you can see, and it's a 8x10 drawing, but I did it on an 11x14 paper. But the nice part about this is if I want to do any test swatches, I got surface to do that. So here is my color palette. And yeah, so let's get started. Let's see, I want to find a nice flat brush here. Let's start with, I'm going in right now with muted turquoise, and oh yeah. Here is, for anybody who's curious, this is the brand of acrylic ink I use, and it's Liquitex. And I do have cadmium yellow up, and yeah. So a lot of people aren't familiar with acrylic ink, and the way I kind of put it is it's sort of the best of both worlds between acrylic paint and watercolor. As you can tell, this looks like just a really rich watercolor type of wash, which is kind of how I'm intending it. But you can also build colors on top of it like acrylics. It's just a lot more of a watery texture, so you have to really just be patient with it and kind of work with it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of one of my favorite things to paint with. So yeah, and my hands look a little green and on the screen, it's because I touched up my hair dye last night, so I got a nice little green color going on. And yeah. Getting in on all of these little details here, and it's okay if it kind of does sort of go into the foreground with the objects. I'm not too worried about that, honestly. But yeah. So, and this, obviously, you've seen how I've painted at this point if you watched my stream on Sunday. I do tend to do a lot of building up of color, so this makes for a really nice base color. It's a nice turquoise color, but not too bright. One may say muted. So, and I like working with a lot of purples and turquoise in my work anyway. And it's also doing a really good job of covering up the blue pencil. I didn't even bother erasing it in this. But yeah. And get around this wing. Meow. Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and bring it around here. And yeah, so here's my first wash, and I'm just going to layer on this. And yeah, it's totally fine if it's like not evenly colored. I kind of enjoy the mess. So I'm gonna add, I got an eyedropper here, I'm gonna add that to my muted turquoise well, and I'm actually just gonna do a wash over the rest of this. I like to actually do that and build these colors over kind of that base color, because I think it does a really good job of placing it in the environment, which is kind of this turquoisey color. It just kind of unifies the whole image in the end. But on the flip side of that, you do still have to build those colors, and it's not as heavy as acrylic paint, so you have to kind of, you know, build it. So I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier. You can see it's subtle, but you can kind of see the difference here. So, got a little bit of a, looks like a paint, seriously. A paint chip must have brought it up. I cleaned my palette shortly before I started streaming, and mostly just to get all the dried paint off. I try to rinse my stuff out whenever I'm done painting, but sometimes that doesn't always happen. I might think, oh, I'll just take a break and get to painting later, and you know, I just kind of forget about it and it sits and dries overnight. Obviously, you can rinse it out with water while it's still wet. If it dries on there and you need it in a hurry like today, you can use nail polish remover, which is what I did. I just filled each well in and kind of let it sit until a lot of the paint came up, and it comes up really quickly. If you actually rinse your stuff out, obviously that's not a big deal, but if it dries on there and you do have time, you can always just kind of let it sit in water, and eventually that paint does loosen up on its own. So that definitely helps. But yeah, otherwise, don't be like me. Actually be on top of keeping your art supplies clean, because admittedly I am horrible about it. Like, I got some pretty funky brushes over here because of that. I go through brushes pretty fast too. Okay, so this is just to add some extra texture. And yeah, now just kind of go in and smooth this out. I'm not fully sure how I'm going to approach colors on here. I got a lot of purples and reds, some pinkish tones, some blues, kind of mixed up. I'm thinking a black cat, but I'm going to give it more of a dark purple tone. The moon is obviously the moon. And actually, I'm going to pull this back out. Yellow orange azo, since most of the label is kind of peeled off it. And let me just bring this over here. I'm only going to need a little bit. So yeah, I try to just keep out what I know I'm going to use, and yeah. And I'm going to do my little splatter, soak, and I'm just doing that. It just kind of expedites the drying process, because otherwise we're just going to sit here and literally watch paint dry, and that doesn't really make for a good stream. Usually when I'm painting kind of off the camera, I take a lot of breaks just to give things a chance to dry out and breathe. Okay, these can actually be wiped off. Sometimes you can dab, other times you have to kind of poke with a, pointy bit. So, yeah. Okay, now I'm going to move on to a different blue. I think I'm just going to layer on some dark blues and purples for the background. So, this one is Phthalo Blue, green shade. Yeah, after some discussion on phthalo greens and blues yesterday, I realized it's actually phthalo. I referred to the phthalo green I had as Greek word green because they put the long word for it in there, and yeah, phthalocyanine. So Greek word blue, and this is a nice, like, almost kind of a little bit darker than cerulean, but I like it. So I'm just gonna kind of flick that on there. kind of start going in around on stuff. It's a nice, it's a lovely blue. And this is a pretty tough brush, it can take this. A little bit of the black is kind of coming up with the water, or with the, you know, moisture from the brush, but that's okay. And I'm actually going to go ahead and dab this and kind of play with it a little bit. This still gives a nice, you know, water droplet effect. And then just kind of, I'm basically scribbling. And this is just me kind of playing around. I like to give my stuff textures. And hopefully it gives other people ideas on different ways to put these things into. I feel like a lot of artists, especially amateur ones, tend to really kind of focus on perfection. And it just seems like self-sabotage when you're starting out. By all means, learn the rules, because that's how you learn to break them. But also, just kind of have fun with it and lean into it. You know, that's how you kind of discover a lot of things about your art. So now I'm going to go in with, let's do a little bit of this deep violet. And I'm just going to, this one's just going to be vertical. And then we'll do a white. A little bit ambidextrous here. And yeah, just kind of gives it a little bit more of a texture, you know, have some of that blue still kind of peeking through. Dry brushing is like one of my favorite finishing techniques. So here is, and also it has a added benefit of, you know, kind of drying out. So here's the here's what I had so far, and in fact I'm gonna kind of go on here a little bit more, and I'll do it more on the bottom here just to give it a little bit of distinction, but I'm using dioxazine purple, which is like a really dark purple, and just kind of going into, I'm going to leave the top alone because I'm pretty happy with that, but just to ground it a little bit, we'll go ahead and use it on the bottom. actually pretty happy with that. And rinse out my brush. And I don't think I'm going to use magenta. I'm at a point where I have to make a decision. And it gets to my white. Because I like how this looks. I think I'm going to leave it alone. But I do want to give it kind of the illusion of stars. So I'm going to take my fan brush and just get it nice and wet. And dip it in my white paint over here. And once again, I'm not trying to get too high up because, you know, give at least some, you know, kind of drowning, but yeah. Alright, and there is my background. I'm just going to go through, and we're going to be painting over this anyway, and I'm just going to wipe out all the white dots from the positive space. There we go. So, yeah, just kind of a nice, simple, and fun background. Didn't need to overthink it. And lovely full moon. I'm going to give it, actually, I should probably get started with the shadows. So maybe a little bit more of this muted turquoise. That's mute gray. I don't know how you mute gray. It's kind of by definition already mute, but I have muted gray. Okay, here we go. Muted turquoise. They put out a mute series a while back that I really like. I don't know if they still do. I haven't seen it around. But it would really bum me out if it turned out like I couldn't get these shades anymore. Alright. And I got a fresh brush. Go ahead and just wet it a little bit. And we're going to go through actually and add shadows. That's just something I kind of like to do at this stage. And let's see. I mean, he's going to be, this is going to have two light sources because obviously he's going to be backlit by that full moon. But also I want some lighting in front. So these are foreshadows. You got, yeah, just over the eyes. So I think they're going to be white with then red pupils. A little bit of dimension in his nose. this also just kind of helps distinguish it just a little bit more from, you know, the background by going over and doing this. I'm getting kind of the basic shapes down. It helps me establish the light sources early on. And like I said, this one's going to be a little tricky just because, yeah, I got two light sources here. And I'm not being too delicate with it. I'm just kind of laying everything in right now. Yeah, so there's going to be a core shadow here, and then it's going to kind of dissipate over here. And yeah. So, yeah, because you're going to see a little bit of reflected light here. Maybe not so much on the cheekbone because there's a bouquet of flowers in the way. And I'm not doing any lights or shadows on the moon. That's gonna kind of come separately. All right, and there's that. And we got some cast shadows here. Flowers, once again, you don't have, it's a little bit more detailed, but you don't have to be too delicate with it because we'll go in later and take care of that. Let's see. There's like the temple, kind of a plane right here. There we go. Alright, and there's that. Okay, so, and now we get to the bouquet. That's the squiggles. So yeah, there's my shadow source, and that's kind of washing it out a little bit. See if I can lower the light source. Okay. And now I'm going to get to moon. And what I'm going to do here is, got my brush kind of loaded with paint. And I kind of outlined the craters a little bit, so just kind of dotting it. what I want is for it to kind of dissipate a little bit. You don't really want to give too hard of edges on it. The moon isn't exactly terribly high contrast, so but you still kind of want, you know, a way to get the craters in. Give them just a second. Alright, there we go. Sorry, just had to kind of do something on my headphones. Alright. And I'm just kind of pushing in some paint here. And it's okay if it doesn't stay in the outline. As long as it's kind of close. Kind of want to look up. I always have my phone here with me, and I was looking up gnocchi recipes earlier, but yeah, just in case I want to look up anything, you know, for reference purposes. You know, I'm just kind of checking out full moons right now, just so it's in the realm of believability. Alright, so there's the shadows on my moon. Alright, and I dabbed a little. Now I'm going to add a little bit of white, or not white, add some water. We'll water down that turquoise just so I can kind of layer my washes a little bit better. And I'm kind of overcompensating on the shadows a little bit. It doesn't need to be that dark, but it'll help me out later on. Alright. I kind of like the idea of giving the moon a little bit of an orangey color. I think it'll stand out really nice against this purple and blue. So, let me find a small, that should work. I want to get myself a small flat brush. And I'm going to I'm going to mute it just a little bit. That's a little too green. Okay. Okay. I need a lot more white for this. So let me get some of these colors mixed up. Oh man. I'm actually running out of white, so I'm gonna have to get some more here soon. Oh no, I'm gonna have to go shopping for art supplies. Woe is me. Alright. So yeah, I got kind of a pale yellowy orange color, which I think is gonna make for a lovely moon. I like when the moon's kind of like that champagne color. Okay. And let's see, edge control. A little bit too much paint on there, but that's okay. I can blend it. Whoops. I'm just gonna stand up here. And actually, trying to like find a better place also to keep my mic, because I was told I sounded just a little bit tinny. So hopefully, I just moved it. Hopefully that sounds better. Okay. All right. Okay, and just get the edge here. It's okay if some of this color kind of shows up underneath. Oops. All right, and now Right. Just getting kind of going a little bit around the craters right now. I'm gonna go back and kind of just do. I'm gonna go back and do those separately. I just want to kind of keep the colors separated right now, just so it has at least a little bit of contrast. It's hard. Moons are kind of tricky just because there's not really a whole lot of hard edges within it. But you still want, but there is, you know, it's so far away that it doesn't really get perceived as a hard edge, but, you know, at the same time it kind of is, because it's really easy to make these craters look muddy. And, I don't know, I like detailed moons. Moons are great. Oops, that's the wrong yellow. Happens all the time. Okay. So, there we go. Okay, and once again, it's okay if it kind of goes over the edge of his ear there a little bit. I'm not really in the business of ultra fine details right now. I'm just kind of getting color laid in. So, you know, I try to be a little careful, but it's nothing detrimental if it kind of gets a little messy at this stage. Honestly, all the way up until the very end, you know, it's fine if it gets messy. I like messy. Okay. Almost dipped it in the wrong yellow again. Okay. And the white can be very opaque. And yeah, sometimes that happens. You have to be a little bit careful by how much paint you have on your stuff, which is why I do tend to do a lot of test strokes on the side, but yeah, we're okay. There we go. Okay. So, almost got the base color laid in. Okay. And now I'm just going to go through and kind of dry brush in on the shadows here. Because once again, we don't want them to be too dark. We don't want them to be too light. There's definite edges there, but it's so far away that it's got to be very low contrast. So yeah, like residual amounts. That's not a residual amount. There we go. It's almost got like a soft pastel look at this stage. Which right now is fine. You do have to be careful with working with white paint and acrylic inks because it is more opaque than a lot of the other colors, and you can have things look kind of chalky. So just, you know, something to be mindful of, and, you know, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can, you know, use it to work to your advantage like I'm kind of doing right now. But yeah, depending on what kind of surface you're trying to depict, that might not be desirable. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the moon is looking right now. Man, this is... There we go. Hopefully that looks better. I keep like kind of trying to check back on I check back like on the monitors and stuff, I guess on my screen, and I'm looking at the live stream, and that does look really overly saturated in color. I think the hardest thing about doing an art stream, if anybody were to ask, is actually figuring out lighting for a lot of this, because there's a lot more subtleties in it than the camera's really picking up. Yeah, so, and it's like you can see it when I scan it, but yeah, any art photography or anything like that it's not just streams. If you're doing traditional media, like, you're going to hit a point where you have to take like pictures of your artwork and stuff, and that's never easy because you're almost never happy with it. Because yeah, there are a lot of little subtleties in artwork that don't really get picked up all that well, or are very difficult too, which is also why with a lot of paintings, if you can go to museums and see them in person, it is definitely worthwhile to do so, because there's a lot of times you'll pick up on certain things that you totally miss even if you've looked at that painting a million times in the past. So that's just kind of my little soapbox. I'm just kind of a little heavy-handed with the paint in this brush. I got a smaller kind of flat edge brush, but yeah, and if I work quickly enough I can actually use some of this paint in the moon. I just want to use really light layers, so, which also helps keep from, you know, wasting paint. And now I'm just kind of going through and adding some lights. I actually do like some of those green tones kind of in it. And this brush is pretty nice too because it's flat but it's fluffy, so if I want to kind of just go in and lift little spots out, I can do that with it, but also kind of, you know, lay in flatter tones when I need to. And if there are just kind of variations in color, like, I'm not really planning a whole lot, but I am just leaning into what I have, which is why I'm totally okay with it not being a perfectly even color on here, because that just gives the opportunity to kind of give it little dips and crevices and all that stuff. And that's just kind of something that I would always sort of suggest artists do, is don't fight with your media, just lean into it. Because if you lean into it, you can make it work for you. And also you can get some really nice surprises. This is kind of going to be the big brightest spot on it, which is why I'm kind of okay with going over it a little bit more. Okay, we're going to go kind of bright along this edge here. Just give it a definite, you know, you can tell there's an edge there. And we'll just do kind of some little lighter spots, you know, because even within the craters, it's not just a smooth hole. There's going to be like different like rocky ledges and, you know, all that from just multiple meteors hitting it or whatever. Do some more edge control. Okay. And also another thing I like to point out is when you're building color versus a wash, I'm tapping this right now to build the color on. If I were to do a wash, it's kind of like what I'm doing here. I'm just moving color from one place to another, and that will give it a more transparent feel, whereas tapping, especially with, like I said, the white is a lot more opaque. The tapping is kind of letting it sit on top. know, I mean, and occasionally I gotta kind of wipe it across, you know, just to kind of soften it a little, but that's like totally fine. Okay. I'm gonna get down here because I haven't really done a whole lot with this bottom part of the moon. And I don't want to overwork this and then have to play catch up on this side, on the bottom part. Alright. Alright. So now, once again, kind of got my brush a little bit too loaded up, but that's okay. I can kind of tap this out. It's kind of like blending makeup in a way. Just tap, 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 tap. Crisscrossing it up here. And I'm starting to get to a point where I'm going to have to add more white to this yellow because I've built enough color onto it. Alright, and now I'm going to go through and kind of dry brush a little bit in the craters. Like I said, trying to keep it very residual. I don't want to brighten it too much, but as of right now, the contrast between the craters and the surface is a little too high. But I don't want to, like, muddy it up too much. Okay. And I'm basically, in a lot of cases, just kind of taking paint and sort of smudging it. Which, once again, you can use totally to your advantage, or, you know, but you have to be careful because it might start looking really muddy. And I'm going to go through now with this. And I really like the edge on this crater, so I'm going to try and add a little bit more of that into the edges along here. And this is where, you know, I'm starting to get a detail brush in. But also, I'll just kind of add a little bit finer, you know, sort of raised surfaces too. So yeah, it's literally just building, building, building. Like I said, I'm gonna go through with more white to really highlight certain parts, but yeah. This has literally just been me building a really pale yellow over, you know, that turquoise base. So yeah, sometimes you just don't really need to do too much with it. You know, you don't have to blend in a whole bunch of colors. You don't have to overwork it. And I've definitely been guilty of overworking stuff in the past, so, you know, it happens to all of us. But I think one of the best, like, things you can learn is when to leave it alone. And, you know, try not to lay my hand in wet paint. Yeah. A lot of people get on to me about wearing gloves whenever I'm dyeing my hair. And I'm just like, dude, I do this, you know, for a living. So if my hands are green for a couple days, you know, it is what it is. I try not to do that, but, you know, it happens. I'm not afraid of having green hands. It's kind of like if you're a professional boxer, you're going to have a black eye occasionally, you know. That just happens. Same reason why I don't really do too much with my nails either. Like, I'll do basic grooming, but there's no point in having a manicure. It's not gonna stay looking nice. So instead, I just admire other people's nails. Oops, that's the claw right there on his wing. Alright, another thing to keep in mind as I'm doing this is colors dry darker. So, you know, if I give it a minute, it might look a lot darker than it did when I first laid that color down. So that's always something to keep in mind with when you're doing shadows and highlights. So I always say a less is more. You can always do another layer of color. So, you know, like right here, you find my I'm going to dry brush this a little bit just to lighten it. All right. And I'll just go ahead and kind of tap a little bit in here. All right, yeah, just kind of, there we go. There we go. Okay, it's getting there. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this up a little bit more because, like I said, once I get that white in, it's going to make these craters look really dark by comparison. So, a lot of these big open areas also, if there's just kind of raised areas inside them, that is totally fine. Okay. All right. And now we're adding white to this pale yellow color. Okay. So got this a little bit lightened. Let me lighten it a little bit more. Okay. A little lighter. Okay. Hi, Michael, and thank you very much. All right. Yeah, I'm kind of winging it a little bit with colors and also just kind of using some of the stuff that I had on my previous painting. I was kind of flying very off of the seat of my pants today, and so I figured I'll just do something I've already finished. You know, and figured I'll just do my Creepy Cute book. One of my, you know, drawings from there. Okay. Okay, that's looking better. I had some residual red paint in the little well where my white paint was, and it kind of mixed together and made it like an orange. So there's going to be a little bit more of an orangey color in here, but that's fine. I think the color variation will just give it a little bit more dimension, which I am always happy to add. Okay. Right. And I'm just building more color. Feel like I'm not really going to get a whole lot done on this painting else except for this moon, but that is okay. So let's see, 7:14. So, you know, I've been at it for a little over an hour. But yeah, hopefully this is enjoyable for everybody to watch. And we're building. But yeah, this is going to build over some of the lighter tones, which are really more mid-tones. And that's just going to give more dimension, you know, in the moon. My biggest thing I got to worry about is making sure this isn't too horribly contrasted from that. But so far, I think it's looking pretty good. Okay. And I'll bring this over. I really like this specific crater. And I'm trying to make it look less like I'm playing favorites. And of course, not all edges, depending on how like old the crater might be, is going to look as fresh as that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It might be something that, you know, happened longer ago, and then that one just hit the moon, like, you know, recently. Okay, this is a good one. And we'll give this side. So I'm trying not to do that with every single one, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I want it to be a cohesive design. The contrast on the moon and foreground makes it look 3D. It's an awesome effect. Thank you. Yeah, I have fun painting moons. I don't paint them as often as I should because, yeah, I have a lot of fun with them. There's a better ledge. All right, get up here. Let's really start highlighting up here. Okay, and I think after this pass of highlights, I'm going to be done, and I'll let it dry and kind of adjust some things from there, just because I don't want to overwork it, like I said. I think I'm going to go through and paint out some of these craters just because I don't want it to be too distracting when I don't want it to be too distracting from the foreground. Sorry, when I get really into concentrating, sometimes I just abandon sentences halfway through. My friends are used to it, but I realize it probably sounds weird to people who aren't used to talking to me verbally. Okay, there we go. That's looking good. Okay. All right. And now I'm just going to leave it alone, and I'm going to give it a second because I got to sit back and kind of stretch for a minute, so... Okay. Yeah, I just had to go stand up for a minute. Okay. So, moving on from that, I'm going to move down to the overall cat. And I think for that, I'm going to go in with a purple. Try not to lay my hand in the wet paint. So I'm going to give them some kind of purpley undertones. I talked about it in the last stream, but one thing I like to point out to people is anything that you're looking at in an environment is never really pure black or pure white. You might perceive it as that, even if you're wearing a black t-shirt. You just perceive that as black. It's not actually black. It might be like a really dark blue that, you know, sort of shows up as black or something like that. Rarely do you actually see black or white in a natural environment. So, and that's something to keep in mind when doing a lot of painting. Anything past like black and white line art, which this started out as, you know, you're going to have undertones with this. And in this instance, I'm using purple. Or I guess violet, if I really want it to be proper. But, like, I have a solid black cat, and even then, he's not completely black because I'll look at him, you know, when the sun's, like, hitting him directly, and he's a really dark brown. And I think that's really kind of the general consensus for most black cats. You know, they're actually brown cats that are just hyper pigmented. I'm actually going to, so I'm going to paint that in a little bit neater instead of trying to pick out all the details in that pentagram. And I'll probably do this part of his wings in a different color. Okay. 7:30 my time. I'm probably going to call it a night at 8 o'clock. Figure 2 hours makes for a pretty decent stream. And also, I'm getting hungry. But yeah, a half hour is at least a little bit of time to make some leeway on this. Okay, bring this down here. Okay, so there's my base color. Cute little purple cat. And yeah, I haven't quite decided what I want to do for like the main color inside of the wings. I was thinking maybe the lime green, give it kind of a little bit of a, you know, vivid pop of color. But I'm not sure if that would be too cohesive with everything else, so I could also do a red. But I'll kind of think on it. I'm not quite to the point where I have to make that decision just yet, so... So yeah, now I'm going to go in. I use the deep violet, and now I'm going to move on to my dioxazine purple. And we're just going to kind of rinse and repeat. And if you'll notice, when it comes to a lot of my color mixing, except with the exception of the line art, one thing that you will notice is I rarely ever use black ink when I'm actually painting. And a lot of that is because, one, like I said, you know, the whole pure black doesn't usually exist in, you know, in the natural world, but also it's a very, very strong pigment, and it's definitely one of those, when you do use it, a little goes a long way. It's very difficult to blend and actually make look dimensional. Usually it kind of flattens things out. So that's why you don't really see me do like, oh, I'm doing a blue object, so I'm going to add in this shadow. I don't just add black to give it a shadow, because of that very reason. And kind of the similar, consequently, you know, I don't know. What am I trying to say? Kind of similarly with highlights, but to a lesser extent. I do use white a lot more than I use black, but I don't just add white to add highlights. I give it, you know, depending on what color the lighting actually is, I might make it a pale yellow, or maybe it's a green lighting. I'll give it a pale green. It's more of a tint using an actual color. It's never actually white. And kind of the same reason. It makes your paintings and drawings look very flat. So, you know, just play around with different colors, and, you know, if you're a painter, and, you know, eventually you just kind of figure it out. So yeah, right now I'm just doing a couple different shades of purple. I'm going to be adding blue into parts because of the highlights. There's going to be the backlighting from the moon. That's going to take into account the, you know, one light source, and then there's going to be the secondary light source, which I'm going to have to use either a different color or the same color, you know, just kind of depending on what kind of lighting I'm wanting. And normally I would decide that ahead of time, but I haven't really done that yet with this. Like I said, I didn't really have any plans when I started coloring it. So yeah. So I'm just kind of playing around with it. See, like right here, I'm trying not to get the very edges, and painting shadows on them. Sometimes I do, and I mean, that's okay, but I'm trying to make it easier to, for that backlighting to actually show up. It'll make it look a lot more dramatic. But honestly, since I'm using blue for the shadows, I'll probably go with a little bit more of an orangey yellow light. It just won't be this same kind of light as what I'm using here. I'll make it a little bit different so you can tell the light sources apart, but yeah, that's probably the best. Probably the best decision for this. In future paintings, I'll do stuff where we play more with lighting, and you'll kind of see how those things work. Because normally you want to make those decisions before you go in, but like I said, I didn't really have any plans for this. I just did the line art for the coloring book, and I was going to call it done, but since I have them, I figure I might as well, you know, make something cute out of them. I actually kind of like the idea of his light source right here being a little heart. That'll be cute. Okay, and I'm not going to have to do too horribly much with this part just because it's such a thin, you know, surface. Still going to go through and kind of define this a little bit more. All right. It's always funny, I look on the screen and I can see my head getting in the way, so hopefully that's not too distracting for you guys. Okay. So that's taken care of, and since I have this color mixed up, I'm going to go ahead and do the backlighting before it dries out. Just in the interest of preserving paint. Make sure that's like nice, and I'm going in with a fine detail brush. And I just use the highlights from this to do the highlights on the cat. That's a little bit too thick of a line. It's okay, I can go over it with a darker color. That's a good thing about being a little heavy-handed with highlights. It's a light color, so if you have to cover it, you can pretty easily. Okay. I think I just need a better light detail brush. Let's see what I have here. That'll work. I need something that just comes to a better point, because that just wasn't cutting it. And since the ear's in the way, I don't want to come down too far anyway, because it's coming directly from the moon, this specific light. but, you know, it will kind of spill over a little bit. So that's what I'm trying to sort of convey right here. Because, I mean, it's not really well contained. Well, it's light, it's not contained at all, but it will kind of spill around. So, it's not going to be, like, it's not going to perfectly end, like, right here. So, if that makes any kind of sense. Okay. Okay. And that's getting kind of that initial shape, and then after, you know, all this dries, I'll start building on the highlights kind of in the middle. This will probably come down to about wings are blocking it right here, so makes for a great, like, dramatic light effect. There we go. Kind of build a little bit more right here. Another thing I tend to do that also helps when I'm painting is I try to work, you know, much like writing, since I'm right-handed, is work top to bottom, left to right. That way I'm not, like, dragging my hand across, you know, everything that I've done before. I don't always do that. I mean, depending on circumstances, I can't always, but it is something that's pretty handy to do when I'm able. Okay. And just kind of stipple it right there. His little toes. Man, I'm getting a lot of mileage out of the paint in this brush now. All right. So some of these fine details can be really hard. And my hair is like totally a mess every time I like go into the screen. Okay. So there's the backlighting, and it does give a really nice, like, dramatic lighting effect. So, because really all you have to pay attention to are edges, and just hope your brushes cooperate with you. Okay, let's get that. And I'm just kind of picking spots right now to give it more definition. There we go. Let me get his tail. Okay. And so there's the edges. Oh, man. So, this is what I have so far. Just gonna take a second and let that dry. See if maybe I can at least get started on the highlights for you guys from the main light source before I head off of here. Okay, so for the highlights, let's see, here's what I'm gonna do with that. So purple and yellow are complementary colors, and when you blend them together, they tend to kind of cancel each other out, making for a very muted, muddy color. So that creates a little bit of an issue when I'm using yellow lighting and I want to brighten something with a highlight rather than flatten, or gray or flatten it out. So this is just something I tend to do. Not every artist does it, but I find it helpful to me, and that's when I find myself in that situation, I give things buffer colors. So I'm gonna go through here with, and it's hard to see because I am going directly on purple, but I'm doing the quinacridone, the Q magenta. So basically I'm just putting magenta over this purple. And what this is going to do is give a little bit of a surface, so when I put in any kind of yellowy highlight, it's not going to mute. It's going to pick up a little bit of that magenta, which is a nice, I usually try for a warmer color, depending on what I'm using, but I'll use a orange or red or a yellow, sometimes a green base, just to make sure that the highlights that I give it are going to be nice and bright and aren't just going to blend into a muddy, nasty looking mess when I go to add highlights and it's a complementary color. So it just depends on what colors I'm working with. But in this instance, I'm going to use magenta. Plus, like I said, it'll look cute with this little heart. Okay. And that also kind of informs, I guess, the overall color of the painting. So now that I've done this, I know I have to kind of incorporate magenta in somewhere else too, because I'm basically adding it to the environment. So it'll probably be in the inner part of these wings. I think that's probably the best place for it. And maybe a little bit in the flowers, because I haven't fully decided what color I want the flowers to be. But I'm definitely more than happy to do some magenta tones with it. It'll probably be like magenta and red. So yeah. There's that. Okay, I can see it on the screen. It's picking up pretty well. So that's good. That's my highlight color now. And I'll just go ahead and kind of just lightly add highlights here and there. Get the eyelids. This is sort of also driving home the reason why I have such a hard time taking pictures of my cat. Let's see. Using a little bit of a different yellow for this. Okay, there we go. And then I'll just kind of go from here. And then I'm just going to kind of try to tap it and blend it, starting out. A little bit of purple to tone it in. Like that. There we go. I'm gonna have to go over this with a layer of purple, but that's okay. Yeah, because I did it a little bit too much up here. But, you know, it happens. Alright. Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you're necessarily wanting them, and that's okay. I'll just go through and I'm just going through with the this is actually deep violet, not magenta, but if it picks up some of that, that's okay. So I just need to go through and kind of deepen that a little bit. It also looks a little bit too much like a skin tone, which is kind of weird. That's not magenta. Alright. And coming up on 7:56 my time. So this is kind of where I'm going to leave it. I might mess with it a little bit off stream, but yeah. I'd say I'm off to a pretty good start though. This has actually been a lot of fun to work on. So hopefully I will have more for you here pretty soon. My next stream will be Thursday at 6 p.m. I think I'm going to do Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday at 6 p.m. each night. So yeah, and otherwise you can hit my links in the description. I have an Etsy store and a Patreon, and I also have a link to my Stream Elements. I said Streamlabs last time. So yeah, there's links there and links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Thank you so much for watching me, and don't forget to like and subscribe the video, and I will see you on Thursday. Bye!